Hello, everyone. Um, Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We're at over 100 participants now, so we'll get going, but we do have many more registered, so I'm sure they will come in. I'm Martin, I've got Steve with me, thanks to some technical problems, but we'll get started and hopefully not have to muddle away through too much. This is being recorded and will be available on YouTube afterwards, and we'll be taking, if we've got time, a Q&A at the end. So please do use the Q&A function to ask those questions and use the chat function if you'd like to make any comments or talk to others. So on this webinar today, you've got me, Director of Policy and External Affairs at the BIA. You've got Steve Bates, CEO of the BIA, and then later on, as we delve into the sector plan and industrial strategy, we'll be joined by Emma Lawrence and Kate Barclay as well. Today's webinar is about everything that's going on for the life sciences sector at the moment, much of it driven by the US ecosystem and actions of the Trump administration. And then we're going to get into the sector plan and the industrial strategy. So the US administration, obviously an awful lot going on, very fast moving, but in the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to try and unpick it and give you the BIA view on the latest developments. Over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Martin. You see, I've got the easy gig here. So everyone's asking me what's going on, and some people are saying, isn't it chaos? And you can sort of see, what's going on with these tariffs, what's going on with the sovereign wealth fund. They're going to try and buy Greenland or buy TikTok, and I'm trying to get it into some sort of sensible way in which I think about this. I don't think that there is chaos going on here. I think that there is an endeavour to run an economic plan, and I'm not going to go through that in grand detail, but I think if you look at the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, what he says he wants to reshape global economic relations and sees it in really epoch-changing terms. If you think about this, the Bretton Woods Agreement that happened after the Second World War, the Treaty of Versailles that happened after the First World War, he thinks he's going to make a very big change in grand global economic reordering. So I think the scale of the ambition we should understand is at this level from the administration, and he wants to be part of it, is basically what he says. So the reason I think this matters is that I think there is an underpinning intellectual idea around this, which is, indebted to Michael Pettis and the great rebalancing thinking. Trump's policies, reflect a transformation of the global trade and capital regime, and it's already started. And if you want more on why I think this, then I'm going to put some links to some very light reading in the chat box, which I think can take you into this. But I think, so on one level, there's massive ambition. The second is, I think that this is, again, another quote from Scott Bessent. He said, Wall Street has had it great, and now under this administration, it's Main Street's turn. And if you think about it in a UK context, I suppose after Brexit, we saw the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, talk about levelling up and trying to reach parts of the country that hadn't had economic development. I think it's a bit of a similar way that I'm thinking that the Trump administration are thinking about this. So there is a tension between doing things for economic growth through the policies that might support Wall Street, but actually I think the focus is very much on those economically depressed areas of the US and the voters within those. So there's a Main Street approach. And I think this is a useful framework to think about all of the things that are happening, because it gives you a sense as to how these fit together. So I think there is a plan, and what they're doing is they're using various tools to get to this big economic change that they want to see. And we should see tariffs or capital controls or the sovereign wealth fund or whatever else comes out as tools in an armory to that big change, rather than the end in themselves. And I think that explains why these things can be used, discarded, changed, put up, put down, and we should expect them to continue to be used as tools rather than policy ends in themselves. So obviously the one that we're probably most au fait with is the president talked about reciprocal tariffs, country-based tariffs, when he did this thing in the Rose Garden a few weeks ago, and that's obviously now been paused, and there's changes to that. So I'm not going to talk too much about that. But of course, there are then also sector-based tariffs, and the two that are most advanced and have been set out, not close to our sector, but it's important to understand, are autos, and here you've got Elon Musk and president talking about Tesla. Obviously, it took a big hit as a result of some of the changes there. And we've obviously seen changes at UK steel as a result of the tariffs being imposed in the steel sector. This is a picture of the Prime Minister talking to steel workers in the UK. But of course, our sector is now within those sector-based tariffs. And what's happened is that there's the Daily Journal of the United States government. There's a national security mechanism, which they put out what they plan to do. And there's a consultation on it. That's what's happening at the moment in our sector. So that is now out for active discussion. The deadline's early next month. You can see it here and you can comment on it in this basis. So we are, if you like, within that second set of sector-based tariffs, and that's what I think we need to think about at the moment.
And it's important to say that there's not been any tariffs imposed on our sector yet. This is all waiting for this to come out. And this consultation is very much asking about supply chains, the reliance on other countries, and whether other countries could use their control over those supply chains in a nefarious means as well. So yeah, no tariffs on our sector yet, but clearly this seems to be exploring the potential for that.
And if you read the experience of the other two sectors, the consultation ended up in 25% tariffs. So I think we wanted to have a punt as to where it might end up. That would be my starter for 10. I don't know, but that's where it's at. So, you know, this will have an impact, and you can see, you know, the UK does rank on both of these sources of US pharma imports, both by volume and by value, but not perhaps as affected as Ireland is, as you can see in this top left-hand thing there. I've been talking about the survey that BIA, our sister organisation in the States, did, which looked at the impact it would have on US biotechs. And there's obviously been talk about what this would mean for the Irish economy if you followed that discussion. So it's pretty impactful. And if you've not seen this data, it's one that we've used extensively at the BIA. This shows UK's imports from America on the left and exports to America on the right-hand side. And as you can see, the medicinal and pharmaceutical products in the green bar on the right-hand side is over £6 billion in 2024. And we actually imported quite a lot, nearly £4 billion from the US in medicines and pharmaceutical products. So we are a really important sector in the UK economy. And this is why transatlantic trade is very important to us. And that's one of the reasons why I went on the media before the sector tariff plan was announced in the US, so that people understood the importance of this to our sector, and just in a sense understood that slide you've just seen, that actually there is a significant trade across the Atlantic between the US and the UK and UK-US in pharma. So that's really what I was trying to do through some of these interventions, which were you may have seen, and thank you for those of you who commented on them. GB News, top right-hand corner, Today programme, bottom left-hand corner. So where we're at is the UK government is now seeking the views of business on how to respond to US tariffs, both the countrywide tariffs, but also the specifics around the thinking of the sector-based tariffs. This is the update, and there is a website where they are seeking input, and this is the link, and the deadline by which they are seeking input is the 1st of May. So that's the formal process, because in a sense it's a government-to-government process. Tariffs are tax policy. Within that context, we're seeing a bigger discussion emerging from Europe and around about how we might respond to the economic policy of the US administration. We've seen letters from leaders of big European pharmaceutical companies in the FT recently. UK talk of ministerial engagement around this. People thinking about the opportunities as well as threats, and political discussion. Liberal Democrats calling for a task force to protect NHS funding and patients from drug shortages. So lots of things are going on. As I say, nothing is set, nothing is in concrete at the moment. There is a consultation process, so that's where we are actually at the moment. And alongside all of that, the UK government, the Chancellor in Washington at the moment, is talking up the prospects of a US-UK deal. Who knows where that's got to? We've heard talk of this in the past under previous administrations. None of this is set in stone, but again, I think it's important to understand that there's a parallel process about a potential deal between the UK and the US Some call it a trade deal, some might call it an economic partnership deal. The exact nature of it is unclear, but there's obviously discussions going on. And I think for our sector, what's particularly tricky, if you think about it, the turned cards where the government knows what the US policy is are steel, they are the country tariffs, they are the automotive sector. What we don't yet know, the unturned cards here, are what the US administration plans are for our sector. So I imagine if you're sitting in Rachel Reeves's office, it's actually quite a difficult thing to do, because can you do a deal if you don't know, or what happens for our sector if a deal was done that looked at cars and steel but didn't include our sector, where would we be? So it's quite a tricky time for us, but that's where I think there's a timing challenge to any potential deal. Again, it's paper talk. There's obviously some discussion going on, but there's no actual firm outcome to that at the moment. And of course, I tried to talk about this in terms of Main Street versus Wall Street at the top of the thinking. Again, for our sector, I think we need to think about, and many members are starting to talk to me about, the other changes the US administration are making. So we've seen the DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, cuts at the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. We've seen big changes to how science funding is operating in states, particularly through the National Institutes of Health, and some of that science funding being cut. And now we've got Marty Mackay, the new FDA commissioner, going on a primetime TV show looking to explain a new agenda for the FDA with some fairly radical ideas around how you might do clinical trials differently or monitor adverse events differently. Again, it's a TV interview. It's not a policy. It is not legislative proposals, but it gives an intention of direction of travel. And I think for us, there's quite a lot of this also going on. You can see that the FDA commissioner, born in Liverpool, so a Brit, I suppose, has some ideas around changing how rare disease drug approvals may operate, and some of those may be attractive to the sector. Again, early stages, I think, here, and again, much of this focused really, I think, on the Main Street audience in the US, particularly post some of the vaccine skepticism that we've seen during COVID. But I think we can see that many members are concerned about the impact of science funding in the States on development of the schemes or processes they've been involved in. And if you have big turmoil in a key agency like the FDA, then less people to answer the phone, or people less focused on answering the phone whilst they worry about their own jobs.
And everyone watching this will have friends over in the States and know that there is a lot of concern over there. And I've already had phone calls with CEOs thinking about setting up their next company in the UK rather than the US because of the impacts of these cuts. And there's been a lot of talk. In fact, John Bell, Life Sciences champion, was in front of Parliament last week saying that this is potentially an opportunity as well, because all of that talent that's losing its jobs in the universities because of the NIH cuts is a potential opportunity for the UK as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. So the other things that we're seeing from the US administration, obviously, is there's also federal action to lower US drug prices. The president has announced actions to lower drug prices. Again, I put it in this context of directing in the direction of Main Street. Obviously, drug pricing is an important issue domestically in US politics and impacts US families in a way that we don't see through prescription drugs in the UK. But there's some quite detailed and developed thinking here from the American First Policy Institute, which is useful to have as an understanding. I'm not sure it's exactly what the policy is going to be, but it gives you a sense as to the philosophy behind some of this thinking. So again, that's another factor that we need to take into account. Again, early stages, looking to direct the Department of Health and Human Services to take steps to reduce prices for American patients. And a devilishly complicated area. I'm not endeavouring to go into it, but I think it's a context we need to be aware of. So where are we at from a BIA perspective, given looking at all of this? I hope my view is don't see tariffs in isolation, see them as part of a broader economic play that may include other things we've not yet seen. The aim is to rebalance the global economy, a really big strategic aim. Perhaps that means changes to how the dollar will operate in a global context. What this means for, we've talked about it in terms of onshoring, but I am not sure that we've yet seen the full extent of the economic policy levers that may be played or pulled from this administration. For our sector, although we would talk about ourselves as biotech or life sciences, I think from a US perspective, pharma is seen as both a global economic play, the endeavour to reshore, the endeavour to have national security of supply for key medicinal products, but it's also a significant US domestic political issue with regard to drug pricing and access and affordability. So both of those are at play. There's a bit of Main Street, there's a bit of Wall Street in there. Sitting beneath this, from our perspective, is this US-UK deal. Will that happen? What time frame will it happen? Very difficult for us to see line of sight of that with only some of these cards being played and the potential for there to be trade-offs between sectors. Again, an important context for us. Don't quite know where that's at. And anyone who's a tennis fan will know that being able to return is as important as the ability to serve. Wimbledon coming up soon. And I think we're keeping an eye on European and other nations' response, including the UK, to all of these initiatives which are coming out at quite a high rate at the moment. So I think that's sort of where we're at. You started to talk about this, Martin. There is an opportunity, I think, for the UK. We always try and think about the opportunity set here. UK remains committed to and is doubling down on investment in science through UKRI and other forms of investment. We've got a great talent base here. Our regulator, the MHRA, is strong, stable and focused on innovative areas and doing new things. And the Mansion House agenda means that we are trying very hard to ensure that there's new forms of capital into life sciences, domestically grown, as well as attracting global capital from around the world if there are changes to how capital may work. And I always say when I'm talking to colleagues in America that the UK sector remains a consistent, innovative, valuable ally and asset in an ever-changing world. Much of the value of some of the biggest American companies have been built on successfully commercializing UK innovation. I think of Humira and many of the antibodies successfully exploited in the US and global markets by US companies based from UK innovation. I'm happy to go all the way back to penicillin, which was obviously a UK innovation that was scaled and successfully manufactured by the US and enabled many GIs to come home from theatres of warfare around the world and set up the era of American prosperity. But I think also on some of the very newest and novelist stuff, if you look at the genomic capability that we've got in the UK, we're a good place to be a scientific partner in much of those things with our data sets. So I think I'm going to stop there. But what we really need, and what I'm really keen that we get is input from BIA members about this. What are you concerned about? What are you excited about? And I'll turn over to Martin for that section of the webinar.
Thank you. I mean, it is so important because government is coming to us to ask what's happening in the sector, how are people feeling about it. So we can only do that if you guys do come to us with your views. So we've got some survey questions, but you can also email us at policy@bioindustry.org as well, with any experiences, with any data that you might have, any real world case examples as well. But yes, we're going to go into some survey questions now to get you guys involved. So the first one is, how worried are you about the impact of any of these Trump policies on your life sciences business in the UK? So hopefully Ange is going to make the magic happen in terms of, there we go. So you can click more than one of these because you might be worried about tariffs and drug pricing. But please do take a look, tick the boxes. There will be other things you're worried about. I'm sure we couldn't make this a fully extensive list, but please do pop your answers in and we will show the results in just a second once enough have come through.
People probably weren't expecting this, Martin. They're not used to us whacking holes in the middle of the...
Here we go. Looks like we're good to get the answers. Okay, science funding cuts coming out top in terms of concerns. And remember, people could click more than one of these as well, which is why the percentages don't add up to 100. So 63% of people worried about science funding cuts. 56%, sorry, worried about tariffs. FDA reorganization coming third at 46%, and drug pricing controls at 24%. Interesting. Only 1% of people saying they're not worried at all, very optimistic bunch, and not sure at 10%. So interesting results.
Yeah, no, thank you. Really, really helpful. And it'll be interesting to see if there's a big topic that we've missed. I don't know, but as we get into the Q&A, there's always the potential that we've pitched it wrong. But thank you, really helpful, and hope you found that useful as well.
And you're not finished there. We're moving on to a second of 3 questions. So that was all hypothetical, of course. Were you worried? But have any of these actually had a negative impact on your business so far? Now, obviously, we've not seen tariffs imposed on pharmaceuticals, but perhaps they have been imposed on other materials that you'll be using in your R&D, for instance.
So this is about whether you've actually felt the impact thus far.
Yeah. Same categories as in question 1. But we have added in no, but not yet. So you're kind of expecting them to. No, I don't think there will be. So you're pretty confident you'll be okay, or not sure as well. And again, we'll just give everyone a chance. I've also seen questions coming in on the Q&A. Thank you very much for those. We'll turn to those at the end. There we go, to get the results now. Be interesting. No, not yet is definitely right out in front there. 58% of people believing that to be the case. So, I mean, that's positive. Not too many people impacted, or companies impacted so far, but 19% impacted by science funding cuts. And it's important to note that those cuts aren't just to research going on in American universities. It's cuts to grant funding programs like BARDA, which gives money to companies, including overseas companies. So there will be UK companies, and also international funding programs like WHO as well.
Yeah, no, I've certainly been aware of the big impact of America saying it's going to come out of the WHO having on key programs that were particularly important for global health priorities. So thank you. It's really interesting to see.
Right, and I did say there'd be one more question. So moving on to the final one. Do you think there is any opportunity for the UK life sciences sector as a result of Trump's actions? So see how many optimists there are out there. Simpler here, and so hopefully we'll get a result in quickly. Pick one only, please. Yes, you think there will be opportunities? No, no opportunities. Maybe, for those sitting on the fence, or you just don't know. Hopefully we didn't lead this question too much.
That's why I'm keeping very quiet at this point. I'll comment when we. Yeah, that's good. I'm glad. I always think there's opportunity, and I think it goes to the can-do attitude of UK life scientists to see it this way around.
Yeah, only 8% not seeing any positive results from this. So that is everything on America so far. We'll come to your questions at the end, but please do keep them rolling in. Now, turning to the UK and the life sciences sector plan, when we put this in the diary many months ago, this is what we intended to be talking mostly about. But the US developments have moved quickly, and there's been a lot of them, so we wanted to take the time to cover them. So as a reminder, the government published a green paper on the industrial strategy back in October, and this set out how the new Labour government intends to support businesses and priority sectors, of which life sciences was singled out as one that would contribute disproportionately to growth of the UK economy in the future. So obviously we were delighted that was recognised and very much reflected what we had been talking to the Labour Party about in the run-up to the general election, and of course we're speaking to all the parties, but it certainly felt like there was broad cross-party support for life sciences, and Labour definitely seized on that, publishing with us ahead of the general election a document called A Prescription for Growth, which was all about how they were planning to support the life sciences sector. But that's now being developed into a specific sector plan. And this illustration in front of you shows the 4 stages of that running in parallel to the production of the industrial strategy. So the Office for Life Sciences has been working incredibly hard, doing a fantastic job of putting together the life sciences sector plan in conversation with the sector. More on that in a second. But other parts of government, primarily Department for Business and Trade and Treasury, have been working on the actual industrial strategy themselves. So we're now in the phase 3 of final kind of detailed policy design on what's going to be in both the industrial strategy and the sector plan. Ministerial roundtables with the sector, of which we've been involved in, and then finally, obviously, ministers will sign off the strategy. It will go out to the Chancellor and Prime Minister, and then published in June, along with the spending review, which will kind of be the government's opportunity to put its money where its mouth is in terms of what it plans to do to support businesses. So as I said, we've been very much involved in this process. It's been driven by the Office for Life Sciences, but we've had an opportunity to input across a range of task and finish groups that were set up. And these were designed to feed into both the sector plan and the NHS 10-year health plan as well, that was being developed in parallel to the sector plan. So all sorts of strategies and plans being developed. It's been a very busy 4 or 5 months for government and for the sector and for the BIA. So as you can see, we're very lucky to be able to get many of our experts, from our chairman, Dan Mahoney, down to some of our staff involved in these processes. So there's been task and finish groups looking at the R&D ecosystem and the public funding flows through that and how they benefit companies. Prioritisation of innovation in the NHS and access and uptake, being involved in those conversations, and then data and digital for research. So how can we make the best use of NHS data? And then access to finance, which was a task and finish group actually chaired by our chair, Dan Mahoney, as well, as he was also the government's life science investment envoy. So, and then underneath those task and finish groups has been other engagement that BI members of staff and BI members have been putting into in terms of skills and manufacturing as well. So loads going on, and then that's all being fed up through advisor groups and working groups, as you can see Steve and former BIA chair Ruth McKernan have been on as well. So hugely complicated process. It's been fast moving at times. We've done our best to feed in and champion our members in this process and the priorities that they have told us through all of our advisory committees and all of our policy work that we've been doing over the past few years. So, you know, we weren't starting from scratch. We very much were taking the ideas that have been developed in our advisory committees and really using this opportunity to push hard for them. And although we are working across, as I said, all of those different task and finish groups and all the different parts of the ecosystem and that will be represented in the sector plan are important, we did feel that these 3 areas, support for scale-ups, a better data deal for UK SMEs, and NICE reform, were the 3 areas that we could legitimately champion and would not be championed to the same levels by other participants in the sector plan process, and where we felt we could bring a unique voice, being the BIA and representing such a broad ecosystem of large and small companies and other players such as charities and universities as well.
Martin, you've done a great job there. Essentially, you've summarised War and Peace and said it's about Russia, which is it is a very difficult process. But thank you to all our members who've been involved in this. We're demonstrating a little bit here about the sausage machine nature of policy making. We're not completely there yet, but hopefully that gives people an insight of where we're at and some of the key priorities that match with things the BIA has been doing for a while.
Yes. So the sector plan hasn't been published yet. As I said, it's still being finalised, but we are starting to see some of the policies that have been discussed through that process coming out. And I'm really pleased to be joined by Emma Lawrence, Head of Data Tech Policy and Public Affairs, who has been instrumental in some of this in the data access area. So over to you, Emma, to tell us what the Prime Minister has already announced so far.
Thank you, Martin. Yeah, just a couple of weeks ago, the Prime Minister confirmed that a health data research service would be established in the UK. And this will be jointly funded with money from the government, but also from the Wellcome Trust. And the idea of this service is to tackle governance and technical challenges with accessing health data in the UK, predominantly NHS data. And access to health data is a policy area we've been interested in a long time for the BIA. Back in 2022, we published a report which outlined all the challenges life science SMEs face in accessing health data and tried to suggest solutions to these problems in terms of streamlining governance and improving the technical infrastructure for health data. Following that report, there was another review that was commissioned called the Sudlow Review, and we sent feedback into that review where we called for a single front door, streamlined governance, and improved technical infrastructure. And that review was published in November, and one of the central recommendations of that review was that there was a health data research service that should be set up, and it also suggested that if there was a governing body, that the BIA should be part of that governing body of such a service. So that was a key recommendation of the review. And then, as Martin mentioned, there was a data task and finish group recently, which also recommended the establishment of a health data research service. So we're really pleased this has been set up. All we know at the moment is it's going to be based at the Wellcome campus in Cambridge. And it's going to build on a lot of the existing NHS data infrastructure. But it will be a really crucial year in the coming year to make sure that it's established properly and implemented correctly, and we're looking forward to working with government and Wellcome to make sure it meets the needs of our life science community.
So really positive progress so far in this. Obviously, we know that many of our members depend on access to high quality data, and we all know the NHS is a potentially very rich source of that. So great to have this first step, great to have Wellcome's significant investment in it, and the government will, in the spending review, announce how much it's going to be investing into this as well. But crucially, we hope that this is a front door, a single front door that SMEs can use to access the wealth of data that we've got, and that's what we've been calling for such a long time, which is great. But that's not the only thing that was announced. Very much off the back of all of the tariffs and economic turmoil that was being caused by that and the concern. I can't remember if this came out before the Prime Minister's or afterwards, but Wes Streeting, Health Secretary at the ABPI conference, I think responded to concerns that have been coming from industry for quite some time, and that many have been saying has been one of the sticking blocks for a successfully delivered sector plan. So.
Yeah, so the voluntary pricing access and growth scheme, the drug price, the drug pricing and control mechanism voluntarily agreed by pharmaceutical companies with the UK government last year. The planned expectations of growth weren't exactly what was expected, and they led to significant disquiet from many companies earlier in the year, which means that the UK government's going to have a look at this again with a speedy review. The reason we put it in is it's an important context to think about. It's not part of the sector plan and the sector review, but it's an issue that's arisen, and it's important to understand that this is a context that is now being worked on at pace, probably against the same time frame. And we hope we'll get to a speedy resolution, but it's certainly been something that the big pharma companies that have branded products have jumped on and are very keen to progress. So we're keeping across this. We are aware of it, and obviously the ABPI lead on this negotiation, but we are making sure that we are aware of it, and it's important for members to know that this is a context against which the sector plan is being developed, and the prism through which I think global CEOs see much of the UK as a market in a world where you've got obviously changes to the US market, but this is obviously been a concern in the UK market also.
Yeah, and it also links with the third of our priorities that we're feeding into the sector plan in terms of NICE reform. It's difficult for nice to approve all medicines, or even many of the medicines if the government isn't thinking about how it can sensibly pay for those whilst maintaining a healthy and sustainable sector as well. So it's all very much linked. As Steve said, it's ABPI led on this part of it, but it does very much chime with what the concerns that we've been hearing from our members and relaying to government in other terms as well. Also, along with the Health Data Research Service announcement, when the Prime Minister was announcing that, he also talked about clinical trials and said that he wanted to see expedited clinical trials, reducing the amount of time that it takes to get them up and running to 120 days. Currently, it's about 250 days. So a significant speeding up of that, which is really welcome, really great. Obviously, it's dependent on NHS trust sites, processes, ethical approval, patient recruitment systems, but also the MHRA being able to approve protocols and other regulatory functions as well. So that was really welcome to see. And we've just had also the MHRA performance data published, which had more welcome news.
Yeah, no, I think it's good to see that the MHRA seems to be back up and running after a difficult couple of years. It's important to see that they've cleared backlogs and the performance data is looking pretty good. So do remind colleagues and thank you to the hard work at the MHRA to get back to being delivering customer service at a period of time where I think we're not seeing the same on the other side of the Atlantic.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'm very pleased to be joined by Kate, our skills consultant, who has been very much involved in the talent and skills elements of the sector plan and this report that has come out recently with a view of helping to shape that. So over to you, Kate.
Thank you, Martin. So as Martin said, yes, BIA have been really closely involved in making sure that we do meet the skills demand for sector growth. The skills report that we pulled together, Life Sciences 2035, looks at the vision for the next 10 years, looking at what those skills gaps are and how we can have some shared goals across industry and government to help address those areas. Quite an in-depth analysis, but the summary report is available on BIA's website to have a good rootle through. Lots of really good data in there in terms of the skills demand and the replacement of the skills that we have in the sector over the next 10 years. The focus really is on 4 key areas. The first one being around innovation and technology. So this is looking at ensuring that the skills keep pace with the technology that we have in the sector and that there is that drive through innovation through our industry and academic collaborations. Then the part around enhanced career pathways is making sure that there is a really clear understanding and support from government policy around the academic and the technical vocational education career pathways for the sector, so that we can not only attract that new talent but upskill our talent within the organisations. There's a big piece here around kind of global leadership, both growth of domestic talent and attraction of international talent. And then the final piece is around ensuring that that sector is attractive and that we can retain the talent that we do have. So yeah, all available on the website, but a lot of this is now feeding into the Life Sciences sector plan and some real key deliverables around shaping the policy going forward.
Yeah, and a huge amount of data in there that I know is being used by OLS, the Office for Life Sciences, to make the case to Treasury to support the policies to improve the skills pipeline for our sector. So very valuable report, and we've just got to wait for the spending review and the sector plan to be published to know how much it's been listened to. So yes, just going back to this, we've as I said, we're in the final stages, and the spending review will be very key to delivering on the sector plan's promises. And here the BIA has obviously been very active as well, both through our sector plan engagement, but separately lobbying the Treasury as well. Really, again, we talked to the government about the whole gamut of issues that our members care about and areas of public investment that matter to our members. And it's always hard to distill those down and to pick the priorities, but you know, these in front of you are where we feel that our voice, our push is most needed. So obviously maintaining the science and innovation base through UKRI and Innovate UK, making sure that SMEs can still access grant funding from Innovate UK, the biomedical catalyst and other programs that have been so hugely important in bridging the valley of death between universities and startups. That absolutely needs to continue. British Patient Capital, part of the British Business Bank, this makes equity investments direct into companies and also takes an LP position in VC funds as well, has built up a great life sciences team that needs extra resourcing to be able to invest further into the sector. And of course, also they need the capital to be able to invest into that sector as well. The regulators, we've already talked about how important it is that they are working effectively and efficiently, and they need budget and support to do that. And then finally, again, we've talked about VPAG and NICE reform and the need for the UK to address its underinvestment in medicines, in innovative medicines as well. But like I say, on manufacturing, on skills and talent, on many other areas, we are also pushing and having conversations with Treasury on those as well. So I'm amazed that we've got 15 minutes left to do Q&A. I've seen them rolling in. Please do feel free to ask Kate and Emma questions as well. I'm sure they'll appreciate me saying that. But we've got quite a few. Steve, have you seen any that take your interest for starter for 10?
Let's just go down the list. So first one we've got is there much guidance around R&D services, e.g. collaborative arrangements with US companies and IP transfer? I think the answer to that is I've not seen any and I'm not aware of any, but I don't know if anybody on the webinar is aware of anything at present in this area. So I think the answer is I've not seen it and I'm not aware of any, but I hope that I'm just ignorant, but
yeah, I'm not either. We can certainly ask our IP committee, but if others on this call are aware, please do put it in the chat. You know, the BIA is a community, and there's a lot of peer-to-peer support, and that's what we're all here for. Quite an open question from Ben there.
What are the potential impacts of Trump administration's actions on public health in the USA? Obviously, we've seen a measles outbreak. Is there a sense this might be an indicator of what's yet to come? I genuinely don't know the impact on public health. I know that they are keen to talk about making America healthy again, and there seems to be some desire to do that. But equally, we've seen, as you say, the challenge of measles outbreaks. We know the impact that the MMR scare caused in the UK a generation ago, and the time it took us to recover from that in terms of positive public health for UK citizens. I don't think I can speculate on that with any degree of confidence. So yeah, time will tell.
Question from Robin: how do you think this might play out in terms of US investment groups investing in UK private companies? I was quoted in the Times over the weekend on this, because I think during the pandemic, what we saw was US biotech companies becoming terribly inflated in terms of their valuation, and a lot of American investors coming over to the UK, where they recognized the science was just as good quality, the management teams were just as good quality, but the valuations just weren't as high because of the different supply and demand dynamics. And we might see that in a similar way with this current situation, that you've got American investors feeling that the US ecosystem is just not somewhere where you can start or invest into a company due to the FDA turmoil, or due to the university research funding, or NIH cuts and other grant funding cuts. And there is a chance that we might see US venture capitalists looking to the UK as a stable place to invest into company creation and growth as well. And as I said earlier, we've already had conversations with people thinking about where to set up their next company outside of the US as well. So it's hard to say. We don't have any solid data on this yet, of course. Very little anecdotal, but that would be my option for what might happen.
Yeah, I think I would see this more broadly in terms of the macroeconomic impact of the changes that we've seen thus far. We've seen downgrades, expectations of growth, and we've seen markets go down rather than up in recent weeks. I think that is having an impact alongside impact on share prices of global pharma companies. So I think we're more likely at the moment to see impacts being retrenchments and negative, particularly in the context of the macroeconomic picture. Although I think Martin's right to stress that there are specific opportunities for the UK, but I think the cold wind will blow across the Atlantic in a global way for everyone, and it feels like it's a tough quarter at the moment.
Yeah, so there'll certainly be some sitting on hands for quite some time.
Given that the UK government missed out on the opportunity to secure a new vaccine plant with AZ earlier this year, what do you think we or the government need to do differently to boost its life science economy and improve national resilience? So I think there's some good things we're already doing to improve national resilience. I mentioned in my blog last week that the Moderna site that makes mRNA in Harwell has been approved for the MHRA and will now go to producing vaccines. So there's some increase in resilience. It was a real shame that we couldn't get the Speak deal across the line a few weeks ago. But I think the key thing here is that we need to work at the pace that we were used to working at in the vaccine task force to secure opportunities as they come as they arise for companies. And I think having a laser-like focus on delivering against the timeframes and needs of businesses from government is one of the things that we need to get absolutely right in the life science strategy. I think also picking some priority areas that we know are where the UK has comparative strength. I always think we've got it in cell and gene therapy. We continue to have it in certain elements of the data offer. It's great to see Isomorphic Labs based here doing the largest raise of any biotech in the world this year, 600 million for the DeepMind based AI drug discovery play. So I think we've got, so focusing on strategic areas, getting the times to work against business needs, and then absolutely supporting that both with the talent and people that Kate's talked about and the capital formation that we need to see through Mansion House would be where I think we need to step up.
Yeah. Next question. Is there any anticipated pause in strategic development and investment for non-US organizations looking to move into or continue activities in the US? I mean, there's a range of different organizations this could refer to, but I think it's interesting. Some large pharmaceutical companies have announced some very significant investments. I think it's $150 billion or something like that so far being committed by the pharmaceutical sector since Donald Trump announced the tariffs. But others presumably would be thinking before making any moves as well.
Yeah, I mean, the key thing is changing any regulated supply chain in our sector we know is difficult, and moving anything very fast is very difficult. I think I've referred to the BIA survey earlier in the webinar. I think that shows, that gives a good sense as to how US biotechs think they'll be able to change or move in response to any of these things. And it does take a long period of time. I don't know is the answer. We've seen, as you say, some strategic announcements, but yeah, these things will play out over a longer period.
A few questions. I'll group a few questions on the MHRA. So someone commenting that there's significant backlogs regarding scientific advice. That is absolutely true. The announcements we mentioned earlier about the statutory functions of the MHRA, including licensing and clinical trials approvals. Scientific advice is not a statutory function, and I believe there are still delays there. Emma, I might come to you for an MHRA related question, because it's the CPRD, the Clinical Practice Research Data Link service that is run by the MHRA or housed within it. But they're asking how, the question is asking how it might link to the Health Data Research Service. Has there been any light cast on that so far?
Yes, yeah. So I think the short answer is yes, there will be some formal relationship between the two, but probably not yet. So I know that CPRD are always involved in the conversations about this service and how it will evolve over time. But I think the intention is that the service will start off with other data sets and bring those in, and on time, over time, bring in or work with other data custodians to bring in other data sets. So yes, eventually, but not straight away.
Right.
There's one there about sector-specific tariffs, including life science. Will sector-specific tariffs also include life science reagents and instruments? I think the answer to that is it is not yet clear the scope of any sectoral-based announcement, but the wording is very broad in its scope, covering all elements of the supply chain. So the answer is possibly. So nothing is excluded at the moment, and I think we should. They may be, but I think the answer is they will possibly be included, and that the broad scope of the announcement is what we see at the moment. Perhaps through discussion, certain things will be excluded, but I don't know. So I think the answer has to be possibly on that one.
And there's a related question. Do you think the Treasury understands or appreciates the risk facing UK life sciences, as well as DHSC, Department of Health? And number 10 from Trump and the tariffs.
I believe they understand and appreciate the risk. I think that we've had serious engagement with the administration around this, and I know that our sector is a very, very important sector for them in the thinking. I think we need to keep going. Information from you that can inform our submissions or provide colour to our submissions about impact, where it's happening, where you're most worried, is also really helpful. But I think that they are seized of the challenge, and they can see it already in in some quite radical moves they've made in steel and in potentially some changes that will need to be made in automotive.
Yeah, but again, a plea to talk to us about your experiences, feed into surveys, feed in via policy@bioindustry.org if you're seeing impacts or worried about impacts. So if you're modelling perhaps the impact on your company, any information you get to us, we can get to government and help them understand even more as well. We've got a question on Innovate UK and when they might be restarting their grant calls. So this is for the current financial year of 25-26. Innovate UK only just got its allocation of funding from the spending review that happened last year to be able to spend this year. Their budget was approximately maintained at where it was, and now they're able to roll out their funding program. So I'd expect to see them quite soon, Pedro. We don't know how much funding will be made available through Biomedical Catalyst and other programs at the moment, but there will be a kind of restarting of that. It's very much kind of disrupted by the changing government and the need to relook at public finances.
Yeah, it is. It's a perennial problem, Pedro, that short-term funding solutions for agencies mean that they stop, start, and it's one that we've raised as a challenge repeatedly down the years. I do understand how much of a pain it is that you don't know when there's a call open or what it might be, and the challenge that faces for SMEs. So fully aware of it. We live with what we live with. They've got their money. They've now got to get their process going. I know that the leadership there are keen to make sure that they can do their core job, which is supporting early stage companies, and we're keen to help them publicise that as soon as they're able to.
Yeah, and as this webinar shows, there are serious actions coming out of government. There's a drumbeat of activity that we're going to see continue. So I think there's a question here on should we shift our manufacturing to the US? We can't answer that, but certainly there's a lot of reasons to be looking at the UK, the announcements that are going to come out in the sector plan around manufacturing and other elements that make the UK very attractive as well. So, well, my answer to that would be no, but I'm not allowed to advise. Right, thank you very much for all your questions. I'm afraid we've not been able to answer them all, but it's really good to have your engagement. We do have more events that you will be able to sign up for. Please do log on to our website, bioindustry.org/events, to find out more details and to register for these. But particularly to flag a webinar that we'll be holding on the 13th of June, 2 days after the spending review, where we'll be unpicking what's been announced by the Chancellor, and hopefully we'll also have the sector plan published at that point as well. It might come alongside at the same time as the spending review, it might be the week before. We don't know at this stage, but hopefully at the point of that webinar, we'll have a lot more details to be able to delve into and talk about. Loads of other great events, particularly I'd like to flag the summer party on the 9th of July. Do get your tickets for that. It's always a great bash.
And I look forward to seeing many of you in Cardiff next week. So yeah.
If you're not already a member and you want to support the work that we're doing to support the sector, to influence government, to connect the ecosystem up through great events, or to save money on your lab supplies and other expenditure, please do get in contact with the membership team, and we'd be happy to help. And finally, thank you to our annual supporters. Without our supporters, we couldn't be doing all this work for the sector. AstraZeneca, Avantor, Cooley, Cytiva, HSBC Innovation Banking, Johnson & Johnson, and LifeArc. Thank you very much for your support. And thank you for joining us. Thank you to Emma and Kate and Steve as well. This recording will be up on the YouTube channel for the BIA if you'd like to watch it all again. But until next time, thank you very much and have a good weekend when it comes.
Thanks all.
Bye.